So is this the farm you grew up on? Did your dad buy it, or was it your grandfather's farm?
My dad bought it, and I'll give you some history as we go. And they come from South Russia, Kassel, South Russia. And I'll have to tell you that later. But he moved up here 7 miles north of Venturia and bought 1/4 of land and built a barn on there. They were going to farm there, he said. He wasn't married yet. So then he farmed that, I think, 1 year, and then an opening came to buy another 1/4 land. And he bought that 1/4 land. And on that 1/4 land was a little house, 2-room house. And we're going to take a picture of that when we go to eat, because it's right across from the cafe. And so then he had a little 2-room house there. And then he looked for a wife, and found a wife by Venturia. About their folks lived about 10 miles apart, and they got married. And so they moved up from Venturia with the horses. You don't know what a header box is, maybe, do you?
Kind of, but could you describe it?
Well, they were used for headering. They had a high wall on one side and low, and the header brought it up with a elevator, and you cut the grain and it went up into that box. That's why they called them a header box, because that's where they used them. But they put the furniture in there, whatever they had, which was very little. And they had about 5 or 6 head of cattle, and I guess an extra horse. And they walked up until they got to the farm. Well, on the way, a little storm came up. Like last night, we had 1.8 inches of rain here. Well, a kind of a storm came up, a cloud, and they're moving, and all of a sudden, the wind blew the header box over, dumped everything on the ground, and my mother's brother was driving the header box. He ended up with a broken leg. And they set it up again and loaded everything back on and went the rest of the way up here. So anyway, they said they moved way north of Venturia. In those days, 7 miles was a long ways, because everything was done with horses. There were no cars then yet. And so that's where they started farming, a little 2-room house. You'll see that house today, but they put a bedroom on the back and a big entry in the front. You have to visualize that house without those. It was just a little 2-room house. And in that 2-room house, 4 of their 5 children were born. And at night, there was a kitchen, and then there was kind of a front room with a davenport. At night, they unrolled that davenport, made a bed out of. So us 2 boys slept in that. Where my sister slept, I'm not sure. But it also had a little attic up on top where you crawled in from the outside. Then they said that house is too small. One of their boys died, so then they had 3 left, 2 boys and a girl. So then they built that new 19-room house, from a 2-room house to a 19-room house. This was built in 26, I think I was 4 years old. They built this 19-room house. Before they built it, we had some horses, and they drilled a well with horses. You've never seen that, have you? Where they go around in a circle and it has to go around the circle to drill this drilling into the ground. Well, they did that. They drilled the well 60 feet deep. They had water. So then they built the house, in the well into the house. They scraped everything out with horses and scrapers. There were no machines, no tractors, no loaders. And then that corner they had to dig out by hand and not get dirt into that well hole. Anyway, then they built that house and had pipes going through the house to the upstairs. They had the basement, ground floor, and then upstairs. Upstairs they had a bathroom and a toilet. It's in the place. If you had to go, you took off like a rabbit up those stairs. The most I ever farmed was I had 18 quarters. It was 3,500 acres or something like that. But we sold. See, my father-in-law, my first wife's father, had only this daughter, and so when he died, we got all the land over there, and I had bought another farm next to it. So then we got to working all this land here and then go over there and work. We were running our legs off 25 miles away. So we finally sold off all of that land, kept this here.
How many acres did your dad farm?
Let's see, about 4 quarters. 640 acres maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quite a difference.
Now, my dad bought this quarter here. That's all in seeds, I think. And he gave that to his daughter that lives in town, the one with that red house I showed you. And I bought this other land here, this crop land here, and then a square section there. I bought that, and you know, at that time, the price of land was pretty cheap. I paid $36 an acre for it. Now the land just south of this farm sold for $765 an acre. Now, 40 years later. But this I still own this, and I rent it out for cash rent. But this farmer couldn't make it. His FHA loan got bigger and bigger, and finally he lost it. And then when I offered to buy it, he said, I can't sell it that cheap. And FHA said, you haven't got any better offers, you better take it. Which was really cheap in those days. I want to show you where the people worshipped here. All these farmers, there's a lot of these farms are not there anymore. There were several over this way and several over that way and here, and we lived south of here, and they all came to this house, this farm. This is my land here again. But this was a little highway at one time, a dirt road, county dirt road. See, there's a little ditch, but it turned back into a country road again, not kept up. But this land here, this is the land just next to my land. They sold for $765 an acre, and some land is now selling for $800 an acre. So that has changed a lot.
Where people would have worshipped. What faith were you guys?
Baptist here. This was a Baptist church. And a lot of people way back here, about 3 miles, you can't see the farms. Yeah, but back there's a roof. But back in there, those people came, and these people and these, and back in from all the way to Danzig. They called this the Danzig Baptist Church. but it wasn't by Danzig. Danzig is 4 or 5 miles over, but it's for identification. And then the churches were a group of, there was a church in Venturia, one in Ashley, and this was called the Danzig Church. And then there was one in Wishick, one in Bernstedt, and one in Napoleon. That was a synod of churches. And Danzig was the head church out here on the farm, which is unusual.
As a head church, what was its role?
Well, its role was that when they got together to have a meeting, they met here. All these churches were stations of this church, which seems rather idiotic. There's not even no town here, but this was the head church. But if you can visualize 6 miles that way, 5 miles, 6 miles that way, 5 miles that way, and these all came with buggy in the wintertime, sled and horses, and the summer, if it rained, buggy or wagons. They came and drove through the creeks with water. And
Was church important to this group of German Russians?
oh, you bet. Oh boy. Oh, here's, I was Lawrence Welk's guest, my wife and I, in Escondido at his show.
Wow.
And then he says, I put rope around 2 seats. That's where you sit. You here and your wife there. And so later, somebody that works in Chicago that knows me, she said, she came to work and she said, at the Baptist headquarters is in Chicago. She worked there. She said, you know, last night I watched Lawrence Welk. I'd have swore Art Bender and his wife were sitting in the audience. The guy laughed. He said, yeah, I saw it too. Anyway, we were his guests. And when his brother had something doing, he'd call up, come over for dinner. Lawrence is coming home for dinner from California.
Was he also Baptist? Or-
No, they're
or
all
just- okay.
Catholic.
Oh, okay.
They're all Catholic. Then pretty soon, these stations, Napoleon and Bernstedt, started their own church. Bernstedt was a station of Napoleon. That didn't work out very long, and then Bernstedt came back to that. Then they moved headquarters from here to Wishick. Then Wishick was the main church. Bernstedt was a station. Here was a station, and another one over here called Beaver Creek. And Ashley then Ashley left and had 2 new stations, and Venturius left and had 2 stations over in someplace. So by that time they all split. Okay.
So your family went to church every Sunday?
Well, if we could, if it didn't rain cats and dogs.
What was the church service like?
All in German, every word of it. Yeah. And my brother, I said one of my brothers died. He's buried here someplace. But you know, we had those dust storms in the 30s. So a lot of that is mixed up. They don't know where we are. We don't know exactly where he's buried, but he's there someplace. Last I saw, before the dust storms, they had a cement. We didn't have money to buy a headstone. They made a cement block about this big, and they put down Art Bender. That was his name, Art Reinhold Bender. So then, 2 years after he died, along came another little Art Bender. But they said, we'll call him Reinhold Bender, Reinhold Arthur Bender. But they were so used to calling the other one Art, they called his Reinhold Art all the time. So when I got to be 16 or 17, I wanted to change my name. Oh, my dad said, that would cost too much. You can't change your name. Why would you want to change your name? I said, you always call me Art, and I hate Reinhold. I want to be called Art. Well, my dad says that would cost too much. So then I went to the courthouse and asked him, can I change my name? When you're 21, you can change your name. Not now. Your dad has to sign. I said, my dad won't sign. Well, then we can't help you. I waited till I was 21. I walked in there one day, And I said, today I'm 21. I want to change my name. Okay, they filled out a big paper. Okay, they says, have your dad sign it and send it in. I says, come on, you told me 4 years ago, after I'm 21, my dad doesn't have to sign. No, somebody responsible has to sign. They don't know who you are. So I went home. I was very disappointed, had my sheet in my hand. And my grandmother was there, my dad's mother. And I told her in German, I said, I got this paper here. They want somebody to sign it. I said, schreiben Ihr Name. Write your name on here. Oh, why should I do that? Everything in German. I said, just write it in there, you know. And she did. I mailed it in. And you know what happened? They wrote me a letter from Bismarck and sent me a card. Send 25 cents and we'll send you your birth certificate. 25 cents? And my dad thought that's going to cost too much. So anyway, there was a barn here. Now, about where that corner of the fence there is. And this way, there was a long barn so that when you came in the wintertime, you had to put those horses in the barn. So they had a long barn with stalls. And so people would come driving in, like if it rained, and you, like that up here, there was a foot in the water, foot and a half of water that went through with the horses and came to church here. Today, we'd never do that. If it rained that much and then hitch up horses and drive across the water, no way. Anyway, this was the road. We drove up another mile and then we went straight over and then down. We had about 5 miles here. I should tell you, but this is earlier yet. Right about in here, they had set up a parsonage. Big square parsonage. Yeah, this big old square parsonage used to be. It was right in here, and he had a little stall where he had his horse. He had a one-horse shay. He'd get on that and he'd go traipsing to Venturia. He'd go the day before, Saturdays. Traipse down there and preach on Sunday. And then Monday morning he'd head back with that one-horse shay. I still remember in my mind, I see that horse and that one-horse shay traipsing down.
Do you remember about how old you were when this happened?
What?
Do you remember how old you were when you remember this?
Well, I was probably 10 or 12, maybe.
Do you remember the dirty 30s?
Oh, sure.
What did all of this look
I
like?
was born in 22.
Oh, okay.
And so at 32, I was 10 years old. And 33, we had nothing but dust storms. And I had to go out and find the cows in the pasture that was so dusty you couldn't hardly find the pasture. Yeah.
How did your family survive through the 30s?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we just lost that one boy. He was, and all he had was pneumonia. The doctors didn't know what to do with it. They shipped him by train to Bismarck, to the hospital, and he was up there a week or so, and he died. Today, there would be no reason for, if you get pneumonia, you can get treated.
Did any of your family members have to work for the WPA or anything like that to get
Oh,
through
yes.
the 30s?
Yeah, my brother had to take 2 horses down the road. The road to Ashley, past our farm, this is straight north of Venturia. They built that road with horses and scrapers and stuff. And then later they remodeled it, made the road much better and paved it.
How far did you have to travel to country school?
1.25 miles, 1.5 miles if you went by the outside, by the road. And we walked it most of the time. Starting here, I used to farm this land many years. wheat and barley and oats. A little corn, and then if we did plant corn, we had to pick it by hand. You know, the cobs. That was a big chore.
Were they all cash crops?
Well, yeah, wheat, barley, and oats you sold for cash. But very little money, just small money.
So farms when you were growing up were only a couple miles apart.
Yeah. But this was my land here. 2 quarters here, 2-quarter sections. And then on that side, starting right here at the corner, that's the farm and the grass. And then over there we had another quarter school land that we bought. And we also rented a couple of school land quarters to make hay on. But from here it's 7 miles straight south to Venturia. Danzig was 6 miles and Venturia was 7.
You know, they say that now there's had less rain than they did in 1937. Does it look the same though?
Well, in 37 we had little rain, but 33, 34, and 35 we had almost no rain. Cattle nearly starved. But there's so much land like this here that's in CRP, they call it. You're getting paid for not working it. That doesn't seem right. So they get pretty good money for not working it. One man bought 2 quarters of land for $36 an acre. He put it in with government CRP, so he got $40 an acre every year. So an acre. So every year that land paid itself off. Done. For 20 years. He got $40 an acre for that land that he only paid 36 for. Some of that equity doesn't look right. It just doesn't look like that's the way it should be done. But the guys that bought it and were able to pay it back, the government paid it back for them. Paid the land off every year for 7 years or 8. To me, when I see that little house, and I think, what a change from where we were born. 2 rooms, a kitchen and the front room, and then the front room had a little, like a closet for the bed. My folks' bed was in there, and we slept out there on that. I don't know if you're familiar how they used to open these old downboards up, roll them out, and you make a bed of it.
Yeah.
That's where we slept. Sometimes 3 of us in one bed, and 2 of us usually. And then when in the new house, all of a sudden here I come home from school and here's a little baby. I said, it looks so red. You know, I said, first I said, what is it? You know, I was so shocked. Grandma brought her in that her little black suitcase she had.
Did the rest of your brothers and sisters like the new baby?
Well, what was to do? We had to. Later on, I wasn't old enough to go out milk, and I had to take care of that baby. He'd scream and holler, want to go out to mama, and I says, you can't leave. I can't leave here either. I got to watch you.
Did you guys come into town often when you were growing up?
No. That was always a matter of, you have to have a car. And we just had the family car, and our dad was not very anxious to let us take the car and go to town. Once in a great while, like a graduation night or something, He let us take the car and go to town. You see what I talked about, climbing up the ladder, and that's where the kids slept,
Yeah.
up in there, but not in the winter when it was too cold. But you know, they ran from the front door would have been right forward here,
Okay.
and they ran around and up the ladder and stayed there.
There are no stairs inside.
Yeah,
Just 2 rooms and then
yeah.
the attic.
But this add-on and the other add-on were not on, so you have to visualize this was the end of the house.
Yep, cut right down there.
So on those 2 rooms, they raised 4 kids.
Close family.
But it wasn't standing here, it was out on our farm.
Well, how would you have moved a house like this into town then?
Well, they moved it from our place, they moved it east to a farm for a few years. And then that farmer didn't like it very well. Then a guy moved it to Danzig, that little town, and lived in it for 15, 20 years there. Then he got a job here in the railroad in Wishig. So he moved the house again to here, and then he added on that and the other one.
Wow.
See, this original piece was always just one. See, when you look at it, you know, you can understand. This was all that was house here, not that on it, not that on.
This been the house you were born in.
Yeah, 3 of us, 4 of us.
Did you ever
And
hear any stories about your birth?
No, no, they wouldn't say anything about us being born. I just questioned, where'd that come from? I said that, I didn't even know if it was a boy or a girl or what, but it red in her face.
Do you know if you were born by a midwife or did your grandma come help?
I don't really know, but in my younger sister, grandma probably helped, I don't know, she was there that night. So they must have known beforehand that she'd better get up. She had to come 10 miles by horse and buggy. She came with one of those 3 tripods, 1 horse and 2 wheels about this high, and like bicycle tires. She came with that. Yeah.
Wow. So that's why they sent you to school that day.
That was, yeah, they sent me to school. I learned a lot that day.
Did you keep going after that?
I tell that story once in a while. I do a lot of public speaking sometimes, not anymore, but I used to. I tell them that they said, Grandma brought that with a suitcase. And I says, you know, I believed that till I was about 16. Then everybody's roaring. By 16, I knew more about it. Yeah, I wanted to show you this. That was from this to a 16-room house, 19-room house, 19. I said 16, 19-room house.
This was the first house your dad built, or that your dad lived in, that you guys lived in after.
Yeah, they moved that down. That was on one. He bought a quarter of land, and this little house was on there. So they moved it down and used it for themselves. And they had built a barn. And that barn stood there until I took over the farm, and one day I tore it down and built that big, $7,000 barn. And then he barely lived there 2 or 3 years and burned it down.